Last year, Muslims around the world took to the streets in bloody riots over a poorly made YouTube video. Guess what Muslims aren't rioting over? The slaughter of non-Muslim men, women, and children by the Islamic terrorist group Al-Shabaab. Just doesn't seem to upset them very much. At least 67 people in Nairobi, Kenya have been massacred for the heinous crime of shopping while non-Muslim and for not knowing enough Islamic trivia to pass themselves off as true followers of Muhammad. According to Al-Shabaab, whose associates had been operating a store in the mall for over a year, many more victims are buried in the rubble. This is the largest terrorist attack in Kenya since the Al-Qaeda-led suicide bombing of the U.S. Embassy in 1998. The only connection between the Nairobi Mall massacre and the nearly 22,000 other terrorist attacks committed in the name of Allah since the fall of the World Trade Center is that they all have absolutely nothing to do with Islam. Just ask world-renowned Quran scholar and British Prime Minister David Cameron.
I think the other thing to remember is that these appalling terrorist attacks that take place, where the perpetrators claim they do it in the name of a religion. They don't. They do it in the name of terror, violence, extremism, and their warped view of the world. They don't represent Islam or Muslims in Britain or anywhere else in the world.
So, jihadists think they're killing in the name of religion, and they think they represent Islam, but they're wrong. Now, where on earth did these horribly misguided Muslims get the ridiculous idea that Allah wants them to attack unbelievers? They got it from a book that apparently has nothing to do with Islam, the Quran. We open the Quran and what do we find? Fight those who do not believe in Allah, Surah 9:29. Strive hard against the unbelievers and the hypocrites and be unyielding to them, Surah 9:73. Fight those of the unbelievers who are near to you and let them find in you hardness, Surah 9:123. Some Muslims read these perfectly clear commands from Allah and they assume that Allah means what He says, not realizing that as devout followers of Muhammad, they're supposed to let Prime Minister David Cameron interpret Allah's commands for them. Of course, we know how Muhammad interpreted these commands. He says in Sahih al-Bukhari 69:24, I have been ordered to fight the people till they say, La ilaha illallah. There is no God but Allah. It seems that David Cameron fancies himself a higher authority on Islam than Muhammad. Perhaps we should start calling him Prime Messenger Cameron. I'm certainly glad we don't have a leader this deluded here in the U.S.
And I consider it part of my responsibility as President of the United States to fight against negative stereotypes of Islam wherever they appear.
Sadly, Prime Messenger Cameron and President Obama were nowhere to be found when the Quran was being revealed. So, when Allah commanded Muhammad and his companions to start killing unbelievers, they started killing unbelievers, just like Al-Shabaab today. Want to see how Islamic history has been repeating itself for nearly 14 centuries? During the Nairobi Mall massacre, the Muslim terrorists only wanted to kill unbelievers, so some of the shoppers tried pretending to be Muslims. But the terrorists weren't about to be fooled. They started asking Islamic trivia questions. What was Muhammad's mother's name? Her name was Amina, but if you didn't answer correctly, you were dead. Notice what we have here. We have people pretending to be Muslims, even though they're not really Muslims, because they're afraid of being killed by Muslims and there's nowhere for them to hide. If you study the Muslim sources, this should sound very familiar. In Surah 9, verses 56 and 57 of the Quran, we read about people during the time of Muhammad who were pretending to be Muslims because they were afraid of being killed by Muslims and they had nowhere to hide. Here's the passage. And they swear by Allah that they are most surely of you. They swear that they're Muslims. And they are not of you. They're not really Muslims. But they are a people who are afraid of you. They're people who are afraid of Muslims. If they could find a refuge or cave or a place to enter into, they would certainly have turned thereto, running away in all haste. If there were a place for these people to hide, they would run and hide. But they've been cornered, so they pretend to be Muslims in order to protect themselves. Why were they so afraid of the religion of peace? because Muslims had been commanded in Surah 9, verse 5, when the sacred months have passed, slay the idolaters wherever you find them.
Islam has a proud tradition of tolerance.
Muhammad and his companions just didn't know that Islam is defined by modern Western leaders like Prime Messenger Cameron and President Obama. So they took Allah's commands very seriously. The unbelievers also took Allah's commands seriously, which is why they said, "Don't kill us, we swear by Allah that we're Muslims," just like the unbelievers in the Westgate Mall. But Muhammad didn't ask trivia questions to test their sincerity. The Prophet of Allah had a different kind of test. He'd send them into battle. "You're Muslim? Great! Go fight the Romans. If you refuse, you're busted." That's why jihad is the ultimate test of a Muslim's faith. It's why Muslims from around the world are heading to Syria. It's why Tunisian girls are entering into temporary marriages with dozens of jihadists and coming home pregnant. It's why suicide bombers just killed 78 people at a church in Pakistan. And it's why Muslims in Al-Shabaab are so desperate to prove their sincerity by slaughtering unbelievers. Surely Allah has bought of the believers their persons and their property for this, that they shall have the garden. They fight in Allah's way, so they slay and are slain. Terrorists aren't going to stop obeying Allah just because our leaders have marshmallows where their vertebrae should be. So until we get our minds around the Quranic definition of a true believer and the Quranic test of true faith,
we should prepare ourselves for further bad news.